Castlevania by Paul W.S. Anderson. Love is immortal. Close on an eye. Glazed and unmoving. Pull back to reveal the face of a German soldier. Regular Wehrmacht. His face is frozen in the rictus of death. As the camera continues to pull back, it reveals another soldier, then another, and yet another. A dozen in all. Every one of them dead. Supercut. August 13th, 1943. Carpathian Mountains, eastern Romania. Aerial shot. Shows a thick forest that covers the mountains. The German patrol has made a stand here. The dozen bodies are arranged in a rough circle. They must have been surrounded. The trees around the dead patrol are all blackened and charred, scorched with flamethrowers, then riddled with bullets. Oberschütz O.S. Quite a battle. Close on. Oberschütz. Lance Corporal Henst, 47. Graying buzz cut, a hardened professional soldier. Henst is a veteran of the Spanish Civil War. Has been in uniform his entire adult life. Henst survives the battleground. Henst surveys the battleground as behind him a platoon of Waffen SS disembark from their armored half-tracks and Kinderkrads. Hafenfighter Weeder. When did it happen? Hafenfighter Captain Weeder steps from a staff car. 27, slick hair, finely creased uniform, carries an officer's baton for effect. Weeder is accustomed to demoralized enemies and easy victories. Has the arrogance of a commander who has never seen true combat. Henst. Recent. A day. Perhaps two. No more. Weeder. They were ambushed. Henst. No, it looks like they had time to dig in. They were prepared for the enemy. Grenadier Buchem, O.S. Obernusch Henst. Look! Grenadier Private Buchem, 35, shaved head. Buchem has followed Henst throughout many campaigns. Owes him his life. Has little respect for Widner and barely manages to hide it. Buchem is examining the bodies of a dead patrol. Buchem, surprised. No bullet wounds. He's right. None of the fallen Germans have been shot. Buchem, continued. Apart from this one. An officer sits with his back against a tree, his pistol still in his mouth. He has blown his brains out. Widner, disgusted, coward. But Buchem is still bothered by the lack of bullet wounds. Buchem. If they were not shot, how did they die? Henst wanders into the killing zone, a full acre of charred forest, torn apart by gunfire, blackened by flamethrowers. After a moment, Henst. No enemy. There are no enemy bodies. He's right. There are no Russian soldiers in the dead forest. Widner. The Russians must have taken their dead. Henst nods, uncertain. Henst. Or... Widner. Or what? Henst looks at the dead German patrol, and then to the extreme devastation they had unleashed around them. The forest has been torn apart with German gunfire. Henst. Our men hit nothing. Exterior. The village. Day. The German convoy exits the forest and pulls into a tiny village nestling in the shadow of the mountains. Barely 24 buildings. This place is remote, isolated, seemingly trapped in time. Interior staff car, continuous. Henst rides with the Widner in the staff car. Widner stares out of the ancient houses and muddy streets in disgust. Widner, another peasant shithole. But Henst doesn't hear him. His eyes widen in surprise. Henst. My God! And we pan to reveal the castle. A mammoth construction that seems carved out of the very mountain itself. Dozens of towers and layers of battlements. Its sheer size and complexity make it hard to take in at first glance. A nightmarish construction fusing Escher with William Blake. Exterior. The village. Day. The convoy pulls up to the village well. Widner and Henst are met by a delegation of villagers. All of them men. We glimpse the women and children peering from behind shuttered windows and locked doors. One man steps forward. Mayor Petru, in his late 60s but still physically fit. Widner. You're in charge here? Mayor Petru. I am the mayor commander. Widner. What is your name? Mayor Petru. Petru commander. Wiedner. Well, Mayor Petru, a German patrol was butchered in the forest, barely a mile from here. Wiedner studies the mayor for some kind of reaction. Sees nothing. Wiedner continued. You know something of this? Mayor Petru. No, Commander. Wiedner. Of course. Wiedner looks around. The village seems unchanged since the Middle Ages. Wiedner continued. What is the name of this village? Mayor Petru. Alberkauth, Commander. Hench has 2 maps spread on the engine of a staff car. He shakes his head. He can't find it. Henst. This castle is on no map. Mayor Petru turns to Henst and shrugs. I do not make the maps. Hench raps Mayor Petru on the shoulder with his baton. It's hard enough to hurt, but the mayor is proud and tries not to show it. Wiedner. I'm curious. Mayor Petru. Commander? Wiedner. The whole world is at war, yet your village is untouched. Mayor Petru. We have been fortunate. Wiedner. Well... Smiles. That is about to change. Suddenly, Wiedner's men have all their guns at the ready as he addresses the villagers. Wiedner continued. Someone in here knows who attacked the men in the forest. Someone saw something. Someone heard something. No one replies. The villagers' eyes are downcast. Wiedner continued. I will have the truth. Still no reply. Wiedner turns to Henst. Wiedner. Take hostages, every 10th villager. Henst. Just the men, sir? Wiedner. Women and children obscuret Henst. Wiedner glares at Henst. Despises his weakness. Wiedner. Women and children. Exterior. The castle. Statuary garden. Day. The German convoy approaches the abandoned fortress. The soldiers herd a dozen hostages with them. Men, women, and children. Buchheim and Henst walk ahead of the convoy, falling under the shadow of the castle. Buchem. Who built such a place? The road to the castle is lined with curious statues. Each one is over 10 feet high, like totem poles, but fashioned from stone and carved in the Gothic style. One grotesque stone head stacked upon another. Their screaming mouths are dark, recessed holes. Wiedner steps from a staff car. Wiedner, to Henst. Move the trucks inside. We belay here overnight. A stone bridge connects the castle to the statuary garden. It spans a deep precipice, lined with jagged rocks. As Henst waves the convoy on, the mayor runs up to Wiedner. Mayor Petru. No one enters the castle. No one has ever entered the castle. Wiedner slaps him to the ground. Wiedner. You do not tell me what to do. The mayor tries to get up, then thinks better of it, wipes blood from his lip. Wiedner. I want to know what happened in the forest. You have till sunrise. Then we execute the hostages, 1 every hour. Mayor Petru. Please, Commander, we know nothing. Wiedner. Sunrise. Wiedner turns on his heel and walks to the castle. As he passes Henst, he nods to the mayor. Wiedner. Bring him too. Interior, the castle. Grand Hall. Day. A long tunnel leads from the bridge into the Grand Hall. The hall is the heart of the castle, wide enough to accommodate the entire German convoy. It seems to be carved from the mountain itself. Numerous staircases lead off to countless rooms and corridors. This is the heart of the labyrinth. Henst. Barking orders. Kohl. Rasch. Guard duty on the bridge. Lapel. French. Klossman. Secure the prisoners. Gessler. Sniper duty. And Peterson? Hingston stares at the great stone fireplace, big enough for the tallest man to stand up in. Henst. Get a fire going. Exterior. The castle. Dusk. The last remnants of the sunset fade behind the fortress walls. Outlined against the darkening sky, the castle seems to be composed of impenetrable shadow. Interior. The castle. Grand Hall. Night. Peterson has a roaring fire going. The Germans have strung electric lights around the walls, powered by a mobile generator. Even with the artificial light, however, the high vaulted ceiling still disappears into shadow. 2 guards watch over the hostages, while the rest of the Germans are trying to take themselves at home. Buchheim examines a curious pattern inlaid into the floor. A dragon, whose long tail forms a giant spiral in the center of the room. Henst. O.S. Soup. Buchheim looks to see Hengst. He's holding a metal cup filled with steaming broth. Henst. Tastes like motor oil, but it's warm. Buchheim glances at the dragon as he takes the cup. Buchheim. Amazing workmanship. Hengst. Towards the dragon. You think he's down below? On a pile of treasure? Buchheim. Smiling. I have found treasure here. Buchheim reaches into his pocket and pulls something out. Close on. Buchheim's palm as he opens his fist to reveal an ornate chess piece. Interior. The castle. Fireplace. Night. Become links hence to a table by the giant fireplace. Ancient fallen tapestries lie tattered on the floor. Hence. Excited. I haven't played since Belgium. Become. And I haven't beaten you since Belgium. They settle by an ancient chessboard. A few of the pieces still lie scattered on the floor. Unlike most chess sets, however, the pieces are either in black or red. Hence. This time will be different. This time I am sober. Buchanan picks up the red king, only to see that it has been broken in half. Buchanan. Someone was a bad loser. As he picks up the final piece off the floor, something catches his eye. Buchanan. Hence. Hence files Buchanan's gaze. Half hidden beneath a fallen tapestry, the barrel of a gun. Interior, the castle. Grand hall, moments later, close on. The gun as Hence shows it to Wiedner. Hence. It's Russian-made. Wiener seethes with rage. No one enters the castle! He returns to the hostages. Wiedner. Get them on their feet. Wiedner pulls out his Luger as he marches towards the hostages. Wiedner. You have harbored Russians or insurgents. You know who killed the men in the forest. Mayor Perchu. Please, Commander, my people know nothing. Without hesitation, Wiedner shoots a woman dead. Wiedner. To the mayor. Lie to me again and you will be next. Close on. The woman as she breathes her last. Suddenly there is a noise deep within the castle, like an ancient wind or the growl of a long dormant beast awakening. Wiedner. The enemy are in the castle! Continued. Soldiers run for their guns. Hensed. Defensive positions! Suddenly the shadows seem alive with movement. Hensed. Mark your targets. The Germans form into a defensive circle. It can't help but echo the other patrol we saw massacred in the forest. Wiedner. Who are they? Wiedner pushes his Luger into the mayor's face. Wiedner. Russians? Resistance? And suddenly the movement stops. A deadly silence envelops the castle. The Germans stare into the shadow. No movement, no sound, nothing. Wiedner. What is it? The mayor seems strangely unafraid. His reply echoes around the great stone chamber. Mayor Perchu. Death. And then it comes. A great cloud of darkness sweeping from every shadow. Bats. Thousands upon thousands of them. The Germans react in horror, some hiding their faces, some shooting wildly in a vain attempt to scare the creatures off. Buchanan. Hensed! Hence turns to see his friend, as Buchanan is flung across the hall, as if a speeding car had hit him. His body impacts 15 feet above the floor, and then falls to the stone, a crumpled mess of broken bones. There! I see it! There is something moving within the seething cauldron of bats. A dark shadow that travels with terrifying speed. Something humanoid, but not human. Hence opens fire, but a moment later he is dashed against one of the half-tracks, his spine broken in two. One by one the Germans are struck down, until just one remains, Wiedner. And as quickly as the bats arrive, they are gone. A shadow falls over Wiedner, the shadow of a man, or perhaps something larger. Wiedner grovels on the stone floor, averting his eyes in terrors, begging for mercy. Wiedner. Please, please, oh God, please! The shadow thickens and falls upon Wiedner, cloaking him in darkness. On his screams, we cut to exterior, the lake, dawn. High cliffs fall away to a dark forest lake. The water is deep and calm. A mile distant, just above the treetops, the highest spires of the castle can be glimpsed. The villagers are still alive. Push the last of the Germans' half-tracks towards the cliff edge. The mayor supervises. Mayor Perchu. Hurry! Even the children are helping. They throw the Germans' guns and helmets into the lake. Mayor Perchu. Everything, everything, leave no trace. Underwater, one of the German trucks comes to rest on the floor of the lake. In the gloom behind it, we see the junkyard of other vehicles. Dozens of them, many marked with the red star of the Russian army, but also other vehicles from an earlier age, 1920s and 30s, and even carts and carriages from before the age of gasoline or even steam. Whatever it is that dwells in the castle, it's been murdering people for decades, perhaps centuries. Exterior, the lake, continuous. With a final heave, the last of the Germans' half-tracks plummets over the cliff edge and crashes into the dark waters below. Close on, the half-track, as it sinks beneath the surface. And then something strange happens. The surface of the water begins to freeze before our eyes, as if winter had arrived early. But we are not moving forward in time. We are traveling back. Supercut. December 20th, 1576. The camera continues to move across the lake, which is now fully frozen. Visible through the light snowfall, there are tiny figures moving on the far shore. As we draw closer, we see there are 3 horsemen. Exterior, lakeshore, day. 3 Romanian knights ride through the flurries of snow. They are at full gallop, pennants snapping in the wind. Their horses are flecked with foam from the hard ride. Their armor, a mixture of plate, chain, and leather, is dented from years of hard combat. These are professional soldiers, real warriors. Their leader pulls up by a frozen pathway, one that leads away from the lakeshore into the depths of the woods. He pulls off his helmet to reveal a mane of dirty, matted blonde hair. Lord Simon Belmont is surprisingly young, but already a hardened survivor, forged in the crucible of battle. Simon. How much further? Christopher. According to the map, a league, perhaps 2. Christopher Belmont is Simon's younger brother by 5 years. Dashingly handsome, he is the favorite amongst the ladies of the camp. The brothers have grown up together and more. Continued. But without Simon's responsibilities as a clan leader, Christopher is reckless where his brother is brave, foolhardy when his brother is considered. Simon. Good. We press on. Vlas. Concern. Lord. Simon's master-at-arms is a giant Moorish warrior who goes by the unlikely name of Vlas. Early 60s, his leathery skin a patchwork of scars, Vlas serves Simon Belmont just as he served his father. He's the closest the Belmonts have to a real family. Vlas. Continued. These are dangerous lands. We should wait for the wagon. For the rest of them. For the rest of the men. Simon. The Turks will not wait for the wagons, and neither will I. With that, he spurs his horse and disappears into the woods. Christopher and Vlas are left in his dust. Christopher. My brother will not wait for the wagons. Christopher laughs and urges his horse on, chasing his brother. Vlas grimaces. He's used to this, then files at a gallop. Exterior, Carpathian forest. Day. In the depths of the forest, it is as dark at night as night. Close on. Hoofprints on the soft earth. Vlas rises from the examining them. Vlas. Turkish patrol, 20 strong. Simon. Reason? Vlas. More than an hour. Less than a day. Christopher. The main force will be close behind. Simon. We must make the village before sunset. Simon is interrupted by a distant noise, the sound of battle up ahead. Simon's hand tightens on the hilt of the sword. Exterior, Carpathian forest, crossroads, day. 2 winding paths intersect at the heart of the forest. Down one races a gypsy cart drawn by 2 terrified horses. They are traveling dangerously fast for the narrow path, but still their driver whips them on. After a moment, the reason becomes clear. Following close behind the cart is a pack of gray wolves, 20 strong, teeth bared, hungry for flesh. Exterior cart, continuous. A young man, Luca, takes aim at the 2 wolves with a short bow. He lets an arrow fly and the wolf goes down, but the others surge over its body in pursuit. Luca. Arrows. Arsuria. Last one. Arsuria is a rare gypsy beauty. In her late 20s, but with the eyes that suggest a lifetime of experience. As she hands Luca the last arrow, the cart hits a rut in the road. The cart bucks and Luca loses his footing. Arcuria reaches for him, but too late. Luca falls. Luca! Exterior, forest trail, continuous. Luca lies stunned for a moment. He recovers just as the wave of wolves break over him. Luca is submerged by the pack. They are tearing him limb from limb. He reaches out in agony, and then suddenly his screaming stops. Luca has been shot dead in the heart. Exterior cart, continuous. Arsuria lowers the short bow. The last arrow is spent, but Luca is saved from an agonizing end. Exterior forest, continued. We see the speeding cart through a screen of trees. Something is tracking with it, keeping pace. A giant black wolf, twice the size of the gray wolves. Its fur dark as night. Its eyes gleaming with an unnatural intelligence. Exterior cart, continuous. The wolf pack is catching up. Arsuria turns to the driver. Arsuria, faster! Suddenly the black wolf leaps from the trees, a terrifying blur. It snatches the driver from his seat. In an instant, both are gone, and the speeding cart is out of control. Arsuria reaches for the reins, but in an instant, the cart crashes into a fallen oak tree and tumbles end over end, tearing itself apart. Exterior forest trail, moments later. Arsuria lies amidst the remnants of the gypsy cart. Broken boxes, shattered barrels, and scraps of clothing are scattered everywhere. She slowly, painfully forces herself to her knees. But already it is too late. Arsuria is surrounded by the pack of wolves. Dozens of hungry eyes, glittering in the half-light. More terrifying, however, they make no move to attack. They just stare at her, silently, malevolently. Then the pack begins to part, making way for the giant black wolf. Its teeth are already stained with the blood of the cart's driver. Close on Arsuria. as a stiletto blade slips from its concealed sheath and into her hand. She holds the blade in front of her, but it seems like a toothpick in contrast to the giant wolf before her. The black wolf stares at the blade and then at Arsuria, close on the wolf's eyes, their black depths hiding not just a terrifying intelligence, but something more. Something ageless, something evil, close on Arsuria. As her eyes begin to glaze, her hand slowly lowers, her grip on the blade weakening. She is being mesmerized. The black wolf advances, its jaws wide, its foul breath playing on her face, its breath moving strands of hair across her lips. It is just inches from her. Suddenly a horse crashes through the wolves, rearing in front of Arsuria, breaking the spell. It's Simon Belmont. Arsuria recovers her senses as Simon scatters the pack before him, his warhorse kicking and rearing, his blade tearing into the wolves. Moments later, he is joined by Christopher and Vlas. As the pack scatter into the woods, Christopher yells in delight. "Christopher! The hunt is on!" And Christopher races into the forest in pursuit. Simon dismounts in front of Arsuria. "Simon, are you all right?" Arsuria: "I think so, thank you." Arsuria pushes her hair back from her face. Simon is clearly surprised by her beauty. After an awkward moment, "Simon, you are bleeding." A trickle of blood runs from her hairline. Simon continued. "Vlas, bandages." Arsuria: "A cut from the fall, nothing more. But she's clearly a little lightheaded." Simon takes her arm. "Simon, sit down." Continued. Arsuria stiffens, not used to being told what to do. After a moment, Simon smiles. "Simon, please." The ice broken, Arsuria smiles back at him and takes a seat. Exterior, Carpathian forest, day. Christopher is at full gallop, chasing a lone gray wolf through the trees. He's whooping in delight, the thrill of the hunt. The wolf darts into a gully and Christopher follows at top speed. And suddenly he brings his horse to a halt. The gray wolf has disappeared, to be replaced by the lone black wolf. Sitting calmly in the middle of the gully, he stares at Christopher, fearless. Christopher: "Brave Sir Wolf." He reaches for his crossbow. Christopher: "But no match for Romanian steel." Christopher hefts the crossbow, but still the black wolf just stares at him. There is something deeply unsettling about the beast's calm gaze. Christopher's horse whinnies, spooked. And then Christopher sees them staring from the trees that line the gully on both sides, glittering in the darkness. The eyes of 100 wolves. Exterior forest, trail, day. Simon has a small fire going. A pot of water boils as he cleans the cut in Arsuria's hairline. Simon: "Warm water and pepper root to prevent infection." Arsuria: "You dress a wound like a woman." Simon: "In war, women are often in short supply." Smiles. "A man must learn to fend for himself." Arsuria smiles back at him. Vlas: "Sire!" Vlas has heard the thunder of hooves. A moment later, Christopher races into sight like the devil himself were in pursuit. Christopher: "Brother!" Simon is on his feet in an instant. Christopher continued. "Prepare your sword!" Simon pulls Arsuria to her feet as 100 wolves burst from the forest. A solid wall of razor claws and snapping jaws. Simon: "Run!" He urges Arsuria towards the fallen oak, where the cart had crashed. It provides some natural cover. Simon continued. "To the tree!" Christopher is the first to reach the dead oak tree. He leaps from his horse and levels his crossbow, close on Simon, as a wolf leaps for his throat, only to be felled by a crossbow bolt in the neck. Christopher reloads and fires again, and again, but nothing can stop the sheer number of wolves. Vlas, Simon, and Christopher lock shields, with Arsuria shelter behind them. The wolves crash around the tree like a breaking wave. The knights have a few feet elevation thanks to the fallen oak, but can barely keep the tide at bay. In an instant, their swords and shields are slick with dark wolf blood. A fierce wolf spies a break in the shield wall and leaps at Simon's unprotected back, only to be driven back by Arsuria, bloodied stiletto in hand, close on the giant black wolf. As he crashes into the knights, Christopher is sent flying off the oak. He tumbles to the ground, winded and defenseless, his sword lost amongst the crush of wolves. The black wolf leaps for his throat, tearing into Christopher's chainmail shirt, tossing him from side to side like a rag doll. Simon leaps from the oak tree, plunging his sword into the black wolf's right hind leg. The black wolf turns, eyes blazing, and slams Simon against the oak. In quick succession, wolves swarm up the oak, overwhelming Vlas and Arsuria. Simon is crushed against the oak. Christopher is buried beneath the pack. Then a dozen crossbows fly, each one felling a wolf. Armored men on horseback emerge from the trees, the Belmont pennant flying above them. In an instant, the wolves are in full retreat. Simon, Vlas, and Arsuria are saved. Simon races to his prone brother. Simon, concerned. Christopher. Christopher sits up, still alive. He opens his tattered mail shirt. The black wolf's jaws have ripped clean through it. French armor. Christopher's throat has been bitten. 2 puncture marks, but the wound seems shallow. Simon examines it, a sudden look of concern flashing across his face. Off the look. Christopher. How is it? Simon. My God. Christopher. What? For a moment, a concerned-looking Simon doesn't reply. Then, Simon. I think that wolf improved your looks. Simon laughs at his brother's troubled face. Christopher looks up to see Vlass and Arsuria are also laughing at the joke. Christopher. Damn you! Christopher lunges for Simon, and the 2 brothers roll across the forest floor. Neither gaining the upper hand, but Simon still laughing his head off. Christopher. Stop laughing! They roll into Vlass's legs. He looks down at the brothers like they were naughty boys. Vlass. Gentlemen, save a little for the Turkish. Simon. Yes. Dusts himself off. Thank you, Vlass. Vlass turns to the newly arrived troop of horsemen. They are 20 in all. Vlass. Bring up the wagons. As the troops begin to move out, a large wolfhound bounds up to greet Simon. Simon. Florin! The big dog jumps into Simon's arms. Its jaws are stained with wolf blood. Simon. You killed the wolf! Exterior Carpathian forest. Continuous. From a distance, hidden in the depth of the forest, the black wolf watches. Its attention seems fixed on Arsuria. The wolf backs off as the sunlight breaks through the trees. He recedes into the darkness of the forest. But as he passes out of frame, the shadow of the wolf is cast on a tree, and for an instant the shadow of the wolf transforms into that of a man. Exterior, forest, trail, day. Simon leads his troops in 2 wagons through the dense forest. Florin follows patiently at his heel. Arsuria rides beside him. Vlass and Christopher follow close behind. Simon. These are dangerous times to be traveling unprotected. Arsuria. We were with a larger group, traveling to Abercath. We had been summoned for a performance when the wolves attacked. We were the only ones to escape. Simon. A performance? Arsuria. I was with a troop of players, artists and entertainers. Vlass overhears. Vlass. Quietly to Christopher. Vagabonds and thieves, more like. Simon. The land is at war, and you? Arsuria. Dance. Smiles at Simon. Even in war there must be laughter, joy, love. Hardened soldier that he is, he would swear that Simon blushes a little. The attraction between these 2 is clear and strong. Arsuria. And what of you? You are captain of these men? Vlass snorts at the imprudence and ignorance of Arsuria. Vlass. Captain. He is a lord. Arsuria. Lord? Simon bows with a mock flourish. Simon. Lord Simon Belmont, at your service. Arsuria. Lord of where? Simon. Of no land in particular. We travel. We fight. Indicates his men. These are my subjects. Taps his sword. This is my kingdom. Arsuria. But what of your home? Simon. Burnt to the ground 10 years past. Driven out by the Turks. Arsuria. And your family? Simon hesitates for a moment. Simon. I have no family, other than my brother, Christopher. Half-brother. He rides up alongside Arsuria. Christopher. That is why I don't share my brother's rustic features. Cocky though he is, Christopher certainly is charming. Christopher. Christopher Belmont at your disposal, and it would be my pleasure to offer you my protection on the ride to Abercath. Arsuria looks him over. Arsuria. I need no man's protection. Arsuria spurs her horse and rides off. Christopher eats her dust. Vlass. It seems my lord knows as much of women as he does of armor. Simon watches Arsuria up ahead. Simon. Fortunate woman. Vlass. My lord? Simon. To be the only one to survive such an attack. Christopher, annoyed. Perhaps her flesh, like her tongue, was too bitter for the wolves. Vlass and Simon exchange a look as Christopher rides off. Vlass laughs and Simon smiles. Clearly his brother is not used to rejection. Exterior. Village of Abercath. Dusk. Simon leads his men from the forest and into the tiny village nestling in the shadow of the mountains. The place is unchanged since the last time we saw it, through the eyes of the German soldiers over 500 years in the future. Vlass's eyes widen in surprise. Vlass. My God! And we pan to reveal the castle. The same giant, nightmarish construction as before, but now the vast expanse of carved stone and twisted metalwork is fresh and new. The riders stop by the village, and we are met by a delegation of villagers, all of them men. We glimpse the women and children peering from behind shuttered windows and locked doors. One man steps forward. Mayor Pachu. This is exactly the same man the Germans will encounter in 500 years. Mayor Pachu. I am the mayor of Abercath. What is your business here? Christopher doesn't like the mayor's tone. Christopher. War is our business, old man. Simon. Turkish raiders have entered this region. We are here to hold the village. Glances up at the towering castle. But it seems our journey is wasted. There must be a garrison of 100 men in such a fortress. Mayor Patru. The castle has no garrison. Christopher snorts in disbelief. Clearly the mayor is senile. Christopher. Then who defends it? Mayor Patru. My lord protects it. In the village. Simon. Alone? Mayor Patru nods. Simon. Continued. Well, I wouldn't meet such a man. He must put Hercules to shame. Exterior. The castle. Statuary garden. Dusk. A handful of horsemen approach the fortress, falling under the lengthened shadow of the castle. The rest have remained in the village. The men stare suspiciously at the statues that line the roads, one grotesque stone head stacked on another. Their screaming mouths dark, recessed holes. Some of the men make the sign of the cross. Vlas. Who would build such a place? Christopher. And why here? The back side of the world. Exterior. The castle. Bridge. Dusk. Simon leads his men across the stone bridge and into the gaping maw of the castle. Simon. No guards, no gates. Why build a fortress and leave it defenseless? The horses seem skittish, on edge. Thorin trots beside Simon's horse, his hackles raised. A pervasive sense of dread hangs over the place. Exterior. The castle. Grand hall. Dusk. The same giant room the Germans had seen, only now the vast stone marble surfaces are polished and new. A roaring wood fire fills the fireplace, but still there's no sign of life. Vlas. My God! A high angle shows us what Vlas has seen. The giant coiled dragon insignia inlaid in the floor. The black and red mosaic glitters in the half-light. Vlas continued. Dracul. Christopher. The dragon? Here? Not possible. Vlas. The red and the black. His colors. Simon surveys the fortress warily. Whatever or whoever the dragon is has got them all spooked. Simon. Dismount. Search the place. Carefully. Vlad dismounts. Calms his horse. He stares at the dozens of stairways and doors that lead from the great hall. Vlas. To himself. We're going to need some more men. Interior. The castle. Corridor. Minutes later. Vlas pushes open a door from the great hall and enters a long corridor. A dozen identical doors line each wall. Vlas. A lot more men. Interior. The castle. Armory. As the sun slips behind the mountains, the castle is becoming gloomier by the second. Christopher finds himself alone in the armory. Thousands of weapons hang from the walls. Enough to equip an army. And each blade is kept razor sharp. But where are the men to use them? Christopher makes his way through the room, gripping the hilt of his own sword. We can feel the growing tension, the sense of dread that is overtaking Christopher. He turns suddenly as if he were being watched. But there is no one there. Relieved for a moment, Christopher backs up and sends a rack of sabers crashing to the floor. The sound is deafening. The effect is terrifying. Christopher. Damn it! Embarrassed, Christopher gathers his wits and pushes on. Interior. The castle. Stairwell. Simon and Florin climb a vast spiral stairwell. Suddenly the hound stops. Its hackles up. Simon. Florin, here! But the dog will go no further. Simon pushes on alone, opening a door to reveal. Exterior. The castle. Bell tower. The battlements are lined with the statues of barbaric ancient warriors. In the distance, the sun is slowly dipping behind the mountains, leaving a bloody trail through the sky. A giant bell dominates the highest of the castle towers, and as the sun sets, it begins to toll. It strikes 3 times. The last toll coincides with the sun disappearing behind the mountains completely. Simon walks to the edge of the battlements and peers over. The sense of vertigo is immediate. Simon takes a step back and immediately senses something behind him. He turns in surprise, sword in hand. Close by, what he had taken for a statue was in fact a man, standing stock still, but his cape is ruffling by in the wind. The stranger has his back to Simon. Simon. Where did you come from? Stranger. I could ask the same of you. The stranger's voice is strong and powerful. Stranger continued. After all, this is my home. The stranger turns. His face is handsome, aristocratic. His body hardened, that of a warrior. Vrad Dracula. Dracula. I am Dracula, son of Dracul, and lord of this place. Exterior. The village. Square. Dusk. Arsuria helps water the horses. A soldier watches her openly, then makes his move. Soldier. We've been at war a long time, and it's been a while since I've seen a woman. Arsuria. I can tell. Smiles. Your breath is as fragrant as your clothes. Arsuria continues her work. The soldier says no more. After a moment, Arsuria relents. Perhaps she was a little too rude. Arsuria I'm sorry, She turns to see the soldier gurgling blood. He has an arrow through his throat. Arsuria looks to the tree line that surrounds the village. There is movement everywhere, as hundreds of fierce Turkish raiders emerge from the forest. Second soldier. The Turks! The Turks are here! Exterior, the castle. Battlements. Simon watches as hundreds of savage Turks swarm the village. Dracula. Bring your men into the castle. It will protect them. Simon races to the stairwell, sword in hand. He shouts back at Dracula. Raise your garrison. We'll need every sword you have. Exterior. The village square. Continuous. Arsuria watches as fighting breaks out all around. Suddenly, the Turks are everywhere. They vastly outnumber the Romanian knights. Vlas. To me! Rally to me! Vlas is at the end of the bridge leading into the castle. Knights and villagers head towards him, fighting their way there. Exterior. The village. Statuary garden. Continuous. Simon thunders across the bridge and into the statuary garden, crushing Turks beneath his horse's hooves. In the midst of the battle, he finds his brother. Christopher, hold them here! For as long as you say, brother. And with a battle cry, Christopher spurs his horse on and charges the Turks. Simon. Vlas, fall back to the castle. Protect the villagers. Set up defenses. Simon spies Arsuria among the chaos, a giant Turkish raider bearing down on her defenseless back. Simon reaches for his crossbow, but before he can take a shot, Arsuria ducks and turns, deftly felling the giant Turk, the razor-thin blade of her stiletto slipping neatly between his armor. This woman really is something. Simon rides over to find Arsuria liberating the dead Turk of his gold purse. Off Simon's look. Arsuria. What? He has no need of it. Simon. Simon, and neither will you if you stay here. There are a dozen more Turks bearing down on them. Simon scoops Arsuria up on his horse and spurs it back to the bridge. Exterior. The castle. Bell tower. Continuous. Dracula calmly surveys the battle. He watches as Vlas and his men usher the villagers across the bridge and into the castle, but he seems particularly interested in Arsuria as Simon drops her from his horse. Only as she enters the castle does Dracula turn from the battlements. Interior. The castle. Entrance tunnel. The long stone tunnel connecting the bridge to the Great Hall. Vlas looks around in frustration. Set up defenses. Where the hell are the gates? Sure enough, there seems to be no gate or portcullis to seal the entrance. The castle is wide open, defenseless. Exterior. The castle. Bridge. Continuous. Simon and a dozen men on foot hold the bridge against the advancing Turks. Lock shields! A solid shield wall blocks the bridge. A wave of Turks breaks against the wall, but it holds. Suddenly, the thunder of hooves and a horseman soars above the shield wall, landing on the bridge behind them. Simon turns sword in hand, but the horseman is Christopher, bloodied and laughing. He was born for this. Simon. I thought you were holding back in the garden. Christopher smiles, discarding a piece of bloodied, broken armor as he dismounts. I became lonely. Suddenly the sound of battle diminishes. Romanian knight. They are withdrawing! Sure enough, the Turks are pulling back. Christopher. They have us outnumbered. Why do they fall back? Simon. Spyglass. A knight throws him a primitive spyglass. Simon puts it to his eye and surveys the village. After a beat, reinforcements. Christopher. How many? Simon's point of view. There are hundreds more Turks emerging from the forest. Simon. Enough. Interior. The castle. Entrance tunnel. Simon and the other knights are withdrawn into the depths of the castle. Behind them, the Turks are massing in the statuary garden. Simon. Let's hope Vlas is prepared. Interior. The castle. Grand hall. Moments later. A stack of tables and wooden chairs form a primitive and ineffectual barricade. Christopher. This is it? Vlas. This damn place has no drawbridge, no gate, no portcullis. It's not a fortress at all. Simon stares at the feeble barricade. Simon. Well, this won't hold them. Outside, the Turks are advancing across the bridge. The Romanian knight are outnumbered 100 to 1. Christopher. We are trapped in here. Simon spies Dracula across the hall. He seated himself in front of the fire, strangely oblivious to the battle raging around him. He seems to be playing chess with himself. This is the same chessboard the Germans will find in 500 years, only now all the pieces are intact. Simon hurries over to Dracula. On his way, Arsuria joins him. Arsuria. We're in trouble? Simon. You speak Turkish? Arsuria flips the bloody stiletto in her hand. Arsuria. The last one I met understood me well enough. They reach Dracula. He is gazing around at the chess pieces, still oblivious to the chaos all around. Simon keeps his voice down, so as to not alarm the others. Simon. We need your men. Where's the garrison? Dracula. Did they not tell you in the village? There was no garrison here. Simon. Then we are all dead. Dracula smiles. Dracula. This castle needs no man to protect it. He catches Arsuria's eye. Was he deliberately echoing our words? But how could he have known them? Smash cut to exterior, the castle, bridge. With the Turks, as they surge across the bridge and into the long tunnel leading to the Grand Hall. There are over 1,000 men in their charge, building up speed, a blood-curdling battle cry on their lips. Interior, the castle, Grand Hall, with Simon's knights. Barely a dozen left, faces grim with determination, facing certain death. Simon joins his men behind the makeshift barricade. He glances over at his brother. Christopher is yawning. Simon. Tired, brother? Christopher smiles. Bored. Interior, the castle, entrance tunnel. The Turkish horde is just moments from the barricade, their charge unstoppable. The Romanian knights brace for impact, prepare for death. The first Turk leaps at the barricade and is impaled by a thick metal spike that erupts from the floor. The Turk's body is slammed against the ceiling of the tunnel. A dozen more spikes emerge from the floor, each one the thickness of a man's leg. They form an impenetrable barrier, preventing entry into the Grand Hall. The leaders of the Turkish charge are slammed up against the wall of spikes and killed outright, their bones crushed and their lungs collapsed by the weight of the men behind them. Panic and confusion spreads through the Turkish ranks as a second wall of spikes emerges, this one at the other end of the tunnel, preventing any exit back to the bridge. Over 1,000 Turks are now trapped in the stone tunnel. And now a panic turns to terror as metal vents in the roof of the tunnel open and something begins to spray down on the Turks, a thick liquid of some kind. Turkish warrior. Turkish, subtitled. Oil! It's oil! Turkish raider. Turkish, still subtitled. Get back! We have to get out! But there is no escape. Interior, the castle. Grand Hall, continuous. Dracula advances, a flaming torch in his hand. He passes Simon and the rest of the knights, his face demonic in the torchlight. He walks with a slight limp in his right leg, exactly where the Black Wolf was wounded. Dracula. A single man could hold this fortress against an army of thousands. And he hurls the torch in amongst the Turks. Interior, the castle, entrance tunnel, continuous. In an instant, the tunnel becomes an inferno, liquid fire leaping from one man to another till the entire tunnel is ablaze. Exterior, the castle, bridge, continuous. There are 200 Turks still on the bridge. Seeing the fate of their comrades, they loose their nerve and run. But the castle hasn't finished with them yet. A wall of metal spikes rises from the ground, forming an impenetrable barrier at the end of the bridge. There is now no escape into the sanctuary garden, and on either side of the bridge is a sheer drop of hundreds of feet to the chasm below. A tremor runs through the bridge, and moments later, to the horror of the Turks, the bridge begins to move. The stone bridge slowly pivots like a spit, tipping hundreds of men and horses off the bridge and into the chasm below. The last few desperately try to hold on, but eventually gravity takes its toll and they fall screaming to their deaths. Exterior, the castle, sanctuary garden, continuous. The remaining Turks watch ashen-faced. Then they turn and run, back to the safety of the village. They never make it. As the Turks flee through the forest of curious statues, the true purpose of these stone guardians becomes clear. Each statue is over 10 feet high, like totem poles, but fashioned from stone and carved in the Gothic style, one grotesque stone head stacked upon another. Their screaming mouths are dark, recessed holes, and from these holes shoot volley after volley of steel darts, each one sharp enough to pierce armor and stop a man dead. In an instant, the peaceful garden becomes filled with the sounds of the dead and the dying. This too has become a terrible, automated killing ground. Exterior, the village, moments later. The last of the Turks staggers into the village, his body pierced with a dozen lethal darts. He takes one more step, then falls to the ground, dead. Exterior, the castle, parapet. Simon and the others watch from a parapet overlooking the chasm in the village beyond. Below them, the bridge to the castle is slowly righting itself, having spun through a full 360 degrees. Not a single Turk is left alive. Simon, in awe. How are such things possible? Dracula. Mechanics. Science. Vlas. Heresy. Christopher. Such machines of death are unholy. Vlas. The devil's work. But Dracula just smiles. Dracula. Then you should thank the devil for your life. Cut 2. Interior. The castle. Grand Hall. The knights clean up the aftermath of battle. Vlas sharpens his blade with the wedding stone. Arsuria, sharp enough? Vlas, not yet. The Moorish warrior continues his work. Conversation over. Arsuria, you don't look like a Vlas. Vlas sighs. Clearly this woman is not going to leave him alone. Vlas, Yosef Abernak Abodur Akbar is my name, but many here have difficulty with it. Vlas smiles. Vlas, continued. These Romanians are a simple people, so I chose a simple name. Arsuria watches the razor-sharp blade go back and forth. Or she is looking at the distinctive tattoo marks on Vlas' wrists, the marks that signify him as another man's property. Vlas, continued. Yes, I was taken as a slave. Arsuria averts her gaze. Caught. Vlas, but not by him. He nods to Simon, organizing his men. Vlas, or his father. Vlas examines his blade, seems satisfied. Vlas, I have been a free man many years. I serve now out of loyalty, something you would know little of, I warrant. Arsuria gives him a sharp look. Vlas, I see you bear the marks too. Close on Arsuria's wrist. As she hides the distinctive tattoo beneath her many gypsy bracelets, angry that Vlas has noticed. Arsuria, tell no one. Vlas shrugs. As you wish. He sheaths his blade. Vlas, but there is no shame in the marks we carry on our bodies. The marks that count are the ones we carry in here. Vlas taps his chest. Over his heart. Christopher. Vlas! Vlas walks away to join Christopher, leaving Arsuria alone. Exterior, the lake. Night. A torchlight procession of villagers winds its way through the forest to the lake. In an echo of what will happen to the Germans in 500 years, the villagers here are throwing what remains of the Turks and their equipment into the deep lake. From a distance, Vlas and Christopher watch. Vlas, suspicious. I wonder how many bodies that lake holds. But Christopher seems distracted. Vlas, what is it? Christopher pulls a bloodied rag away from his neck, where the black wolf had bitten him. Christopher, this damn wound, it won't stop bleeding. Exterior, the castle, night. The castle looming against the night sky, brooding, malevolent. Interior, the castle, grand hall, night. Simon's men have made camp in the great hall, just like the Germans will in 500 years' time. Simon, I want lookouts in the village, and guards posted on the bridge. Romanian knight. Yes, my lord. Simon, the men are to sleep here, but no one is to stray from this hall. He looks around. Something is bothering him. Simon, where is Arsuria? Interior, the castle, corridor. Arsuria is exploring the depths of the fortress. She stops by an alcove in the wall. It contains a gold candlestick holder. Arsuria removes the candle and scratches the gold with her stiletto. It's real. Smiling, she places it in her bag. Suddenly, a terrifying dark shape passes between the camera and Arsuria, so fast that we can't make it out. Startled, Arsuria stares into the darkness, white knuckles gripping her blade. But whatever it was, it is gone. Interior, the castle, bedchamber. Arsuria pushes open the door of the chamber and stops in surprise. The room is opulently appointed, fit for a princess, swaths of silk and priceless fabrics everywhere. Arsuria walks through this wonderland, unsure of what to steal first. She stops at a dresser. The mirror is curiously missing, but Arsuria hardly notices. Laid out on the dresser are brushes and combs made of the finest ivory, inlaid with gold and studded with jewels. She runs a beautiful comb through her hair, smiling like a little girl lost at play. An ancient withered hand brushes slightly through her hair, right after the comb has passed, barely touching her head. Arsuria seems oblivious to it. Arsuria examines the comb. Studded with rubies, it alone is worth a king's ransom. Arsuria casually slips it beneath her robe. Suddenly, a noise behind her, like the intake of breath. Arsuria turns, but there is no one there. Unsettled, she prepares to move on, until something catches her eye. On the other side of the bed hangs a picture, covered in a drape. Arsuria approaches it and pulls off the drape to reveal herself, or rather a beautiful painting of herself. Dracula, I see you have found your room. Arsuria turns, startled, to see Dracula standing behind her. Arsuria, I beg your pardon, I didn't mean to intrude. Dracula, charming, intrude, but this is your chamber. Arsuria, this room for me? That is not possible. Dracula, I cannot have you stay with the soldiers. Besides, such a gem needs a fitting setting. Arsuria, thank you for your hospitality. Arsuria is taken back and not a little flattered. Arsuria, I don't even know your name. Dracula, I am Dracula, son of Dracul. And you are Arsuria, and you're the lord of this place? Dracula, and the lands beyond. Arsuria, I would never think the lord of such a place could be so young. She's leaving out and handsome, but it's plain enough. There's an immediate spark between Asuria and Dracula. Dracula. I believe you dropped this. Dracula holds something out to her. It's the comb she had stolen, inexplicably now in Dracula's hand. Asuria, embarrassed. I'm sorry, Dracula. It's nothing. A mere trinket. This castle contains a wealth far greater. Smiles. Besides, everything in this room is yours, to do with you as you please. Asuria places the comb back on the dresser. Asuria, still embarrassed. In times of war, the arts are a luxury. A humble entertainer must make a living however she can. Dracula. Indeed, even by posing for paintings? Asuria turns to see Dracula now standing by her painting. How did he get there so fast? Dracula. Tell me, much did the artist pay you? Asuria. Not enough. Dracula. I'm sure. No price can be placed on such beauty. Asuria blushes. Hard to tell if she's really coy or just acting. Dracula. 10 denarii would be an insult. Asuria. Shocked. How did you know what he paid? Dracula doesn't reply. He just smiles. Asuria glances at the painting. Asuria. How did you even get it? In the distance, in the depths of the castle, a bell tolls. Dracula. Ah, time to eat. Interior. The castle. Dining hall. Night. This impressive room with its high vaulted ceiling is lit by a dozen flickering oil lamp chandeliers. Their design is both intricate and beautiful. Their technology, groundbreaking. They illuminate a long oak table which easily seats Simon and remains of his knights. Dracula sits at the head, with Asuria to his right and Simon to his left. The opulent feast is served by Mayor Perchu and his villagers. The hungry knights devour roast pig, deer, and pheasant, washed all down by an endless supply of wine and ale. Simon raises his goblet in a toast. Simon. I must thank Lord Dracula for his hospitality and for offering us the protection of his home. Glass. Quietly to Christopher. And the sooner we leave it, the better. But Christopher seems distracted, his skin pale and sweaty. He dabs at the wound in his neck. It is still bleeding. Close on Simon. As he becomes aware of Florin under the table, the dog's hackles are up. Simon. What is it? The dog seems upset, restless. Simon. Here, boy. Simon slips the dog a leg of mutton. Simon. Here. But the dog won't touch the succulent meat. Simon. What is it? Not hungry? Simon throws Florin the meat, but the dog just growls and backs away from the chunk of tender, juicy flesh. Close on Asuria. As she swallows a gulp of rich red wine, she smiles at Dracula. Asuria. Perhaps if the Lord would indulge us, he could tell us a little of himself, of his family. She looks around at the immense scale of the dining hall. Asuria. How they came to build such a place. Vlas. Yes, tell us, please. Tell us of the dragon. A cold chill descends on the hall. Vlas has given voice to what everyone else has been thinking. Dracula stares at the knight, but Vlas refuses to look away. After a long beat. Dracula. The dragon. Then I fear you know my family story all too well. Asuria senses the tension in the air. Asuria. I don't understand. Christopher. Because you are not Romanian. If you were, you would know the tale of the dragon. Vlas. The butcher of Transylvania. Dracula slams the table. Dracula. Furious. That name will not be used here. In his anger, he has spilt a goblet of wine. The deep red liquid spills across the table. Dracula watches it and regains his composure. Dracula. There were many lies told about my father, by the very people he fought to save, to the knights. It seems I must teach you your own history. Dracula signals to Pertru. The mayor turns an ornate wheel, and 100 smaller oil lamps, like theatrical footlights, begin to illuminate the walls of the room to reveal a picture gallery, which encircles the table. The dozens of paintings are unsettling in their intensity, depicting as they do battle and betrayal, love and death. The epic, terrible story of Dracul, the dragon. Dracula. 50 years ago, the Turkish threatened our borders, just as they do now. Suleiman the Magnificent was the Ottoman Pasha, famous for his cruelty and ambition. He was hungry for empire. His men raided deeper and deeper into our lands. Close on the paintings. In the flickering lamp light, the painted figures seemed to shimmer and move, as if coming to life. To illustrate Dracula's words, Dracula. The Romanian king, Radu the Weak, lived up to his name. Powerless to stop the Turkish scourge, he turned to his noblemen instead, creating the Order of the Dragon. The greatest warriors of the land joined the order, and the greatest of all these was Vlad Tepes. Close on. The painting of Vlad Tepes. He looks almost identical to Dracula. Arsuria, your father. Dracula, yes, my father. But even if Arsuria believes this, we do not. The similarity between Vlad Tepes and Dracula is just too great, too uncanny. This is not father and son. This is the same man. Dracula. Vlad Tepes swiftly rose to become leader of the order. He even took the name Dracul, the dragon. And slowly the flickering figures in the painting become live action, and we are in a flashback narrated by Dracula. Flashback. Dracula. Voiceover. Vlad Dracul raised an army to lead against the Turk. Barely 2,000 men and boys. What chance did they have against the mighty Solyman, whose army was over 100,000 strong? But Vlad Dracul did the unthinkable. Rather than waiting for the Turkish to attack, he took the battle to them. For the first time ever, a Romanian army invaded the lands of the Turk. We see the Romanian army raiding Turkish villages, burning the houses, stealing the livestock, taking Turkish prisoners. Dracula. Suleiman was furious. He immediately ordered his army to attack. But this was Dracul's plan. In his haste, Suleiman did not allow his army to prepare, and they left without sufficient provisions. We see the Turkish army on the march, filled with pomp and arrogance, a glittering, unstoppable war machine led by Suleiman himself, a slovenly fat man carried on a golden litter borne by a dozen slaves. Dracula. Instead of facing the Turk, Dracul withdrew, and laid waste to everything behind him. He burnt the crops, poisoned the wells, left nothing for the Turks. The Romanian army retreats, taking their Turkish prisoners with them. Following them, Suleiman's vast army marches on through blackened fields and burnt villages. Over time, their armor becomes tarnished, their flags torn and dirty, their pomp and arrogance replaced by tiredness and hunger. Dracula. But still Suleiman urged his men on. Dracula, desperate to catch and crush Dracul. But all they found was a black and desolate wasteland. Suleiman bathes in a large golden bath filled with fresh water, while his men are handed a quarter cup of water each, their sole ration for the day. Dracula. By now they had marched deep within Romania, but still Dracul fell back, burning his own villages now, poisoning his own wells, drawing the Turk ever onward. The once proud Turkish army is ragged and depleted. Men begin to fall by the wayside, left to die of thirst, hunger, exhaustion, but still Suleiman drives them on. Dracula. Until eventually there was nowhere left to run. At the gates of the Romanian capital, Suleiman knew that Dracul would have to turn and fight. But what greeted the Turks, the horrors that they saw, no man would have anticipated. As the Turkish army crests on the horizon, they stop in amazement. Shock and horror fill their faces. Dracula. In the fields before the city, Dracul had ordered the Turkish prisoners he had taken to be impaled, every man, woman, and child. In silhouette against the setting sun, 1,000 bodies impaled on sharpened stakes, some of them still alive. Dracula. On seeing such horror, the Turks began to falter, thinking they were fighting demons and men, not men. Word spread that Suleiman had marched them to the very gates of hell itself. Suddenly demonic figures erupt from the ground at the unprotected flanks of the Turkish army. They are covered in black ash and barely seem human at all. Dracula. And then Dracul launched his attack. His men had dug trenches in the burnt fields and hid themselves beneath the ash. When they emerged, the Turks thought them the living dead, rising to take their souls. And at the heart of this battle, like some demonic warrior king, is Dracul. He swings a giant axe, laying waste to a dozen Turks with each blow. Dracula. Weak with hunger, crazed with thirst, and now terrified for their very souls, the Turks turned and fled. As the great army flees, Suleiman's litter and his great golden bath lie abandoned in the dirt. Dracula. Suleiman was brought before King Radu in chains, but he was not to be spared. We see Suleiman's bloated body impaled with the others in front of the Romanian capital. Dracula. So crushing was this defeat that for 40 full years the Turks never dared cross our borders again. Dissolved from the horrors of war, too, peaceful calm meadows, as Dracula and a handful of battle-weary retainers ride back to his lands. Dracula. As for Dracul, he returned home, to the woman that he loved. The countryside here is green and fertile. As Dracul dismounts at the gates of his small castle, we see a woman jump into his arms. She clearly loves him, caring little that he still wears his blood-stained armor. Dracula. The woman that he would marry. As he twirls her in his arms, the scene changes and we find ourselves in a beautiful wedding chapel. The woman now dressed in crisp bridal white. Dracula. The woman that he swore he would never leave again. As Dracul and his bride kiss deeply, we still haven't seen her face. Dracula, the woman that he hoped someday would bear his children. Alicia. And as the two lovers eventually part, we see the woman Alicia's face at last. She is the double of Arsuria. Cut 2. Interior, the castle, dining hall, night. Dracula pauses in his story for a moment, close on Arsuria. As she stares at the painting on Celia that hangs on the castle wall, mesmerized. Arsuria, what became of them? Dracula, treachery, betrayal. Arsuria's eyes meet those of Dracula. Dracula, death. Resume flashback. Interior, King Radu's throne room. We see Radu the Weak, fuming on his throne. Dracula, voiceover. King Radu quickly became jealous of the praise heaped upon Dracul, and fearing that the people of his kingdom loved the dragon more than their king, Radu secretly turned against him. Radu is conspiring with lackeys and flunkies. Dracula, under the king's instruction, the leaders of the church accused Dracul of heresy. They claimed that his victory over the Turks was a result of the dark arts, a pact with the devil. Lies were spread that those impaled before the capital's gates were not Turks at all, but Romanian women and children, and that after their deaths Dracul feasted on their flesh and drank of their blood. Interior, Dracula's summer home. Dracula, Dracul and Alicia were seized, a beautiful wooden summer house by a lake. Dracula and Alicia are torn from each other's arms by the king's guard. Interior, King Radu's throne room. Dracul is thrown to the floor before Radu the Weak. As Dracul looks up the man he once served, his eyes burn with anger and betrayal. Dracula, voiceover. Dracul begged for mercy, not for himself, but for Alicia, but even his beloved wife was not to be spared. Exterior, courtyard. Alicia is bound to a ladder, which is slowly lowered onto a huge bonfire. Dracula, voiceover. She was accused of witchcraft and burnt alive. Dracul is forced to watch. Tears stream down his face, but not once did he look away from his love. Dracula continued. He watched his love perish before him in the flames. She died in agony, but not once did he look away. Not once did their eyes flinch. And Dracul silently swore vengeance, a vengeance like no other, one that would last till the day he and Alicia would be reunited. Match cut from Alicia to Arsuria. Interior, the castle, dining hall, night. Arsuria is caught in the emotion of the story, never once taking her eyes from Dracula's, almost as if it were her story. Arsuria. And Dracul? Dracula. There were those who were still loyal to the dragon, those who knew that the poisonous lies were untrue. Resume flashback. Interior dungeon. The doors to Dracula's cell swing open to reveal shadowy figures. Behind them, several of the king's guards lay dead on the floor. Dracula, voiceover. They helped him escape, and that night Dracul began his vengeance. Interior, King Radu's bedchamber. The spoilt pampered king splashes his face in a golden wash basin. When he straightens up, Dracul is standing right behind him. Catching sight of him in the mirror, Radu turns, terrified. Radu, what? What do you want? Dracula glances down. The king has wet himself. Close on King Radu, a look of horror on his face. The camera pulls back to reveal interior church. Radu's head has been severed from his body. It sits atop the church altar. Surrounding Radu's head are half a dozen other severed heads, all the flunky priests and bishops that had denounced Dracul and Acelia. Dracula. Voiceover. And so Dracul turned his back on the church that had betrayed him, the god that had forsaken him. As the camera continues to pull back, it reveals the church crucifix. It hangs upside down, desecrated. Interior, the castle, dining hall, night. Simon. And then? Dracula. Some say he embraced the dark arts, of which he had been wrongfully accused. But in reality, he and his followers fled from the capital and found an isolated place to call home. Dracula looks around at the ornate hall, at the fortress his father built. Dracula continued. Dracul and his retainers built this place, a refuge against a world that had turned its back upon them. Close on Christopher. Seized by a sudden coughing fit, he is unnaturally pale, sweating profusely. Dracula. Are you all right? The food and wine in front of Christopher is untouched. Dracula. You've hardly eaten. Christopher's POV. His vision blurred with fever. He catches sight of a villager reflected in his wine goblet. In reflection, the man looks almost skeletal. His ancient, aged skin shrunk onto his bones. His very flesh seems rotten. Christopher turns away, disgusted. But what he sees now is even worse. The tender meat on which the knights are feasting is old and rancid, overflowing with writhing maggots. Their goblets are filled not with fine wine, but with something putrid and rotten. Under the table, Florian growls, backing away from the leg of mutton Simon had thrown him. This, too, is rotten with maggots. The dog, like Christopher, can see through the glamour of this place. Christopher lurches to his feet. Vlass. What is it? Christopher turns and stares at Dracula. This time we don't see what Christopher does. But whatever it is, it terrifies him. Christopher. No! No! Knocking over his chair, Christopher flees the room. Simon. Brother! Simon races after him, but his brother has already disappeared into the labyrinthine interior of the castle. Continued. Close on Dracula. Watching the disarray amongst the knights, smiling. Exterior, the castle, night. A silent silhouette against the night sky, brooding and malevolent. Exterior, the castle, battlements, later. Vlass is organizing search parties, dispatching men to look for Christopher. Simon, concerned. Any sign of him? Vlass shakes his head. Simon, keep looking. Vlass stares up at the towers of the castle, unsettling and oppressive. This place, Simon nods. I know. He catches sight of Dracula, walking on one of the lower parapets. He disappears into a darkened doorway. Interior, the castle, chapel. Dracula enters the ornate chapel. The place is beautiful. He looks up at the cross and smiles. The crucifix hangs upside down. The chapel is desecrated. Mayor Petru. These were the only ones left, alive. Dracula turns to see Petru at the back of the chapel. Two Turkish prisoners sit beside him in the pews, their hands and legs bound, their mouths gagged, terror in their eyes. Dracula. Then they will have to do. He leans down by the first Turk, sniffs him like an animal smells its prey. Dracula. For now. Dracula opens his jaws wide, long fangs appearing in his mouth, close on the chapel floor. The beautiful inlaid mosaic suddenly sprayed with blood, the muffled screams of the Turks. Close on the second Turk, eyes wide, filled with horror, struggles to be free from this pew, but there is no escape. Dracula approaches him, his mouth smeared with blood, eyes filled with bloodlust. But at the moment of his kill, Dracula hesitates. He looks at his hand as a drop of water falls on it, then another. Dracula looks up to see. Three women clinging to the ceiling of the chapel, defying gravity. Their fingers are crooked and gnarled, their faces hideous and old. Angelica, Anya, and Alicia, the brides of Dracula. The three women are weeping, and their tears fall on Dracula. Angelica, pleading, Are we to go without? Anya, Are we to have nothing? Alessa, Please, please. Dracula sighs with impatience, withdraws from a second victim. Dracula, very well. And the three brides descend on the Turk like shrieking demons. Their ferocity is terrifying to behold. They literally tear him apart, bathing in his blood. Close on Anya. As her head comes up, her mouth and fangs are smeared with the Turk's blood. She is now young and beautiful. Like all the brides, she has a passing resemblance to Dracula's lost love, Alicia. Anya, not enough. Angelica, it's not enough. Alicia, more. Angelica and Alessa are also young and ravishing, but Dracula has no patience for them. If he once loved these pale intimidations of Alicia, that love is now long gone. He turns away, indifferent. Dracula, then do what you do best. Exterior, the castle, battlements. Simon leads a search party for his brother. Suddenly, a trio of shadows are cast over the men, something passing overhead between the castle and the moon. Simon looks up, but whatever it was is gone. Exterior, the village. A Armenian knight stands guard on the edge of the village. A noise from a nearby barn catches his attention. Interior, barn. The knight cautiously enters the barn. It's dark, filled with shadows. Anything could be hiding in here. As the knight advances, we glimpse him from an obscure angle. Something is watching him. Something not human. As the tension mounts, the knight rounds the corner and sees Angelica laid out provocatively amongst the hay. The knight can hardly believe his luck as Angelica smiles at him. She parts her dress and beckons him on. Exterior, the village, rooftops. The second bride of Dracula steps effortlessly into frame, as if walking on air. Anya surveys the village below. She spies a victim, another knight, this one guarding the village square. Anya smiles and flies up into the air. Exterior, the village square. The knight looks over his shoulder to see Anya step from the shadows. She smiles seductively at him. Exterior, the castle, battlements. High on the castle walls, Arica stands alone, looking out over the moonlit forest. It's a romantic but also menacing image. Amongst the towering Gothic architecture, Arica seems very small and vulnerable. Close on Arica, as suddenly something moves behind her. It's Alessa, crawling down the castle wall head first. The vampire bride rears up behind Arica, Arcia, fangs bared, ready to strike. When suddenly, Dracula steps into frame, saving Arisa. Alessa snarls angrily and backs away, scuttling back into the night. Dracula to Arsuria. You should not be out at night. Arsuria turns, surprised, but not disappointed, to see him. Arsuria. Why, surely I am safe in this fortress. Dracula. Of course. Dracula glances over Arsuria's shoulder. In the distance, Alessa disappears over the castle wall. Dracula. But the night air is cold. He motions towards the door, back into the castle. Dracula. Please. Interior. The castle. Arsuria's bedchamber. Arsuria stands at the door to her chamber. Dracula in the corridor outside. Arsuria. Well, good night. Dracula. Good night. Arsuria closes the door. The attraction between these two is undeniable. Simon. I don't trust him. Arsuria turns, shocked, to see Simon sitting quietly in the shadows of the chamber. Arsuria. What are you doing here? Simon. Looking for you. Simon gets to his feet. Simon. There's still no sign of Christopher. This place has a curse upon it. Simon produces an ornate golden necklace from which hangs a crucifix. Simon. I want you to have this, for your protection. Arsuria turns and presents her neck to him, delicate and slender. Simon. It was my mother's, and her mother's before that. As Simon drapes the necklace around her, his hand brushes Arsuria's skin. A shiver runs through them both. Arsuria. Thank you. She turns, their faces just inches apart. For a moment they hold a look, and it's electric. Simon. I'm placing a guard on the corridor outside. Don't leave this room tonight. Interior. The castle. Corridor. Simon closes the door to Arsuria's room. A guard stands to attention. Simon. Guard her with your life. No one is to enter. Interior. Somewhere in the castle. Close on Christopher. Huddled in a corner, in the darkness, sweating and shaking, going through agony, the mother of all withdrawals. Interior. The castle. Corridor. Later. The guard stands to attention outside Arsuria's room, allowing no one entry. Interior. The castle. Arsuria's bedchamber. Night. Arsuria is asleep, but she is troubled by vivid dreams. Her sheets are cast aside, her negligee soaked in sweat. Close on the stone wall behind the bed. As the blocks of stone begin to move, they silently turn and then withdraw, like pieces of a gigantic puzzle box moving with the logic of their own. They create a dark opening in the wall, a gaping void, which spreads until it consumes both the ceiling and the floor. Arsuria's bed floats in the dark limbo, supported by a narrow pillar of stone which rises up from the hidden depths. Arsuria is still sleeping, but her dreams are becoming more tortured. She throws herself from side to side of the bed, from one to another, as if trying to wake. As her movements become increasingly wild, Arsuria becomes perilously close to the edge, as if she were to fall from the bed. It would be to her death. As Arsuria's dreams begin to crescendo, something rises out of the dark chasm. It is Dracula, floating on air, looming out of the shadows. Arsuria's lips part, but still she does not wake. Dracula leans over her, breathing her in, savoring her. He brushes the stand of her hair away like a tender lover. And Arsuria's eyes flicker open, but it's as if she doesn't truly see. Her voice is distant, hypnotized. Arsuria. My love. Dracula smiles and rears back, his mouth stretched wide, filled with fangs. He lunges for Arsuria, like an animal devouring its prey. But Dracula is stopped at the last moment, snarling like a beast when he sees the crucifix around her neck, the one placed there by Simon. The very sight of the cross sears Dracula's flesh, for an instant revealing his true form, the ancient withered face of a monster. Arsuria screams and wakes, sitting bolt upright in bed. Dracula is gone. The room is intact. Everything that had gone before, just a vivid dream. Exterior, the castle. Window to Arsuria's bedchamber. Night. Arsuria goes to the window and stares out over the moonlit forest far below. The camera pulls back to reveal Dracula, mere inches from her, upside down, clinging to the wall like a spider. Exterior, the castle, bell tower, dawn. The giant bell tolls 3 times as dawn breaks over the castle walls. A cold mist hangs from the air, shrouding the village. In the distance, Simon's knights search the houses and barns for their missing brethren. Knights. Anton! Mysteria! Vasil! Exterior, the castle, grand hall. Vlass makes his reports to Simon. Vlass. 3 more are missing. 2 from the watch on the village. 1 guarding the castle walls. Simon. When? Vlass. Sometime last night. Simon. There must be Turks still alive in the forest. Vlass. Perhaps. It's clear neither man really believes this, but what else could the explanation be? Simon glances at the castle walls, bearing down upon them. Simon. And my brother? Vlass. Still no sign. Simon. Damn it. Simon's frustration is building, fighting an enemy he cannot see. Simon. Where is Dracula? Vlass. No sign of him since last night. Simon. We'll find him. As Vlass leaves, Simon catches a sight of Arsuria, leaving the castle. Exterior, the village, day. Arsuria walks through the village, headed for the forest. Around her, Simon's knights are still searching. Knights. Anton! Mirza! Vasil! Exterior, the forest, day. The village disappears from sight as Arsuria wanders through the forest. She stops at a narrow brook. The crystal mountain water looks inviting. Arsuria kneels beside it and dips her hands into the stream. The water is icy cold, but refreshing, and Arsuria splashes her face. The water runs down her neck, soaking into her cotton dress. Arsuria sighs in delight, then suddenly stops. All the noise of the forest has ceased. No bird call, no animal sounds, nothing. Arsuria glances around, suddenly afraid. As the tension mounts, she is grabbed roughly from behind. The muscular arms belong to Simon. Angry whisper. What the hell are you doing out here? Arsuria. I couldn't. Simon. Quiet but stern. Keep your voice down. Arsuria. Whispering. I couldn't stand to be in that place any longer. I had to get out. Simon pulls her roughly back into the undergrowth. Arsuria. What is wrong with you? Simon nods upstream a distance. For a moment Arsuria sees nothing. Then 3 fierce Turkish raiders emerge from the forest. Then another 2 right beside where Arsuria and Simon are hiding. Then another 3 further downstream. They are surrounded. The Turkish raiders scan the forest. It seems as though they don't see Simon and Arsuria. Close on Arsuria. As she notices something hanging from the nearest Turk's belt, a gold purse, close enough to touch, the temptation is just too much. Despite their situation, and despite the fact that the Turk is an ugly giant of a man, Arsuria just can't resist the opportunity to steal. Close on the giant Turk, suddenly aware of something. He turns to see Arsuria crouched in the undergrowth, stiletto in one hand and his gold purse in the other. Arsuria, continued, shrugs. Sorry. The giant Turk raises his axe, but never gets a chance to strike. Simon runs him through in an instant. Their cover blown, Simon leaps into action, becoming a whirlwind of steel, long sword in one hand, a chain whip in the other. Both are in constant motion, and wherever they move, men die. The Turks are all seasoned killers, but still no match for Simon. In amazing display of swordsmanship, he kills all 7 of them with ruthless precision. Arsuria, impressed. It seems I owe you my life for a second time. Simon, perhaps you should stay out of the forest in the future. He cleans his blade on one of the dead bodies. Simon, it seems to disagree with you. Simon turns over the Turk's body and searches through his jerkin. Arsuria, I thought you didn't approve of looting the dead. Simon checks another body. Simon, I'm not looting them, I'm searching them. Arsuria, sarcastic. Oh, searching. Simon, 3 of my men disappeared last night. I thought these Turks may be responsible. Arsuria, and? Simon, if they were, he steps away from the bodies empty-handed. Simon, they took nothing. Arsuria, you're bleeding. Blood drips from a deep cut in Simon's jerkin. Simon puts his hand to the wound, only to have it knocked aside by Arsuria. Arsuria, no. Smiles. My turn this time. Exterior, the forest. Minutes later. Simon is stripped to the waist, his muscular torso hewn of oak. Arsuria is doing a good job of stitching his wound, a rough iron needle sliding through his flesh. Simon doesn't flinch. Arsuria, how am I doing? Simon, you dress wounds like a man. Arsuria smiles back at him. Arsuria, it's the only thing I do like a man. She ties off the thread and admires her handiwork. Arsuria, this should heal, better than the others. She nods to the multiple scars that crisscross Simon's body. Arsuria. You have so many wounds. You must be a great warrior. Simon. If I were truly a great warrior, then they wouldn't have hit me. He pulls his jerkin back on. In the distance, the sound of Romanian knights hunting for their comrades. Knights. Anton, merci, Vasil. Exterior, the village, square, daytime. Two knights move through the square, right past the village. Well, calling out to the lost men-at-arms. Knights. Anton, merci, Vasil. The villagers watch them from behind shuttered windows, the rank stares and glassy eyes giving nothing away. Knights. Anton! Interior, the village well, continuous. The camera is deep within the well. The sky, a tiny circle of azure, barely the size of a gold piece. The voices of the knights echo in the distance. Mercer, Versil! The camera pulls back to reveal three sunken faces, flesh pulled tightly across their skulls. The missing three knights, lying undiscovered at the bottom of the well, their dead bodies drained entirely of blood. Interior, the castle, depths, day. In the dark recesses of the fortress, Christopher is huddled in a corner shaking. His skin is deathly white, almost translucent, his body soaked with sweat. A sudden noise makes him look up. Simon's dog, Florian, pads out of the shadows. Its sympathetic eyes gaze at Christopher. Florian sees his pain, whines in sympathy. Christopher. Good dog, good dog. Christopher looks away for a moment, pained, fighting a huge internal battle of some sort. But when he looks back at Florian, his eyes are glazed. Christopher. Good dog, come here. The faithful hound pads forward. Christopher. That's it. Unsuspecting Florian licks Christopher's pale, sweating face. Interior, the castle, corridor, continuous. An empty corridor deep in the heart of the fortress. In the distance, we hear a terrible whelping, the sound of a wounded dog crying out. Agony. Interior, the castle, grand hall, day. Simon is interrogating Mayor Patro. Vlas stands at a distance. He's never liked the mayor, but now he looks like he'd like to split the man in two. Simon. Where is Dracula? Mayor Patru. My apologies, but sudden business has called my lord away. Simon. Business? What business? Mayor Patru. My lord's lands are vast. They sometimes require his attention. He will return tonight. Simon is far from convinced. He's about to push the mayor further when he catches sight of something. Simon. Florian! The dog staggers into the hall. He seems skeletal. The life sucked from him. Simon. Florian! The faithful hound collapses at Simon's feet, dead, his coat flecked with blood. Simon picks up the hound in his arms, on the verge of tears. This is more than a dog to Simon. Florian was a constant companion in battle, part of his family. Simon. Who did this to you? Interior, the castle, corridor. Simon leads Vlas and a party of men into the depths of the castle. He is following a trail of blood left by Florian. They reach a dead end. Vlas. Nothing. But a sudden movement makes Simon hesitate. He holds a flaming torch above him to illuminate a shadowed corner. Rocking to and fro is a disheveled figure, his back to them. Figure. Mumbled. Like a fast mantra. Lord protect me, Lord protect me, Lord protect me. Simon. Christopher? The figure turns. It is indeed Christopher, his mouth and chin covered in blood. He sees Simon and holds his arms out in desperate plea. Christopher. Oh, God! His hands are also covered in Florian's blood. Christopher. Please help me, brother. Interior, the castle, Christopher's bedchamber, day. Christopher is racked with convulsions. It takes several men to hold him down. Christopher. No! No! Sunlight streams in through the open window. Christopher writhes away from it. Arsuria. Close the shutters! Arsuria stands in the doorway. Arsuria. The light seems to upset him. One of the men does as she commands. Arsuria joins Simon at Christopher's bedside. Arsuria. Let me help. Sometimes a man will fight less if it is a woman holding him down. Arsuria puts her hands on Christopher, and immediately becomes still. His eyes fix on her. Christopher. You are the one! Arsuria is taken back by the intensity of Christopher's gaze. Christopher. He's coming, from the darkness, for you! He's coming! Simon. Who's coming? Christopher. The dragon! And Christopher is seized by convulsions once again, his lips flecked with foam. Christopher. To Arsuria. He's coming for you! You've killed us all! Simon moves Arsuria away for her own protection. Christopher screams at the men holding him down. Christopher, you'll all die in this place. Simon, restrain him, for his own good. Arsuria glances back to Christopher. Arsuria, what did he mean? Simon, he's delirious. It means nothing. Arsuria, the woman in the painting. Dracula's wife. I look just like her. This is no accident. He brought me here. Simon takes Arsuria by the arm. Simon, you are under my protection. I will see that no harm comes to you. I swear it. Simon moves Arsuria to the door of the chamber, where Vlas is waiting. Vlas, more bad news. Hard cut 2. Interior, the castle, grand hall day. Simon, Arsuria, and Vlas stand in the great hall. 3 pale, bloodless bodies are laid on the floor before them, the 3 missing knights. Vlas, they were found in the village well. Simon, the villagers? Vlas, claim to know nothing. Simon, what in God's name happened to them? Simon examines the bodies, the distinctive puncture marks on their necks. Vlas, not a drop of blood left. Simon, this is not the work of Turks or bandits. Arsuria, this is not the work of men. Her chill words hang in the air until, Vlas, there's more. To one side of the bodies, a blanket covers something. Vlas removes the blanket to reveal Florian. He kneels by the dead hound and pushes its neck to one side. The dog has the same distinctive puncture marks as the 3 dead knights. Vlas continued. The wounds are the same. Simon, what are you saying? Vlas, nothing, my lord. But it's clear what Vlas means. Simon flies into a rage. Simon, you imply my brother did this? How dare you? Caught up in an anger, Simon strikes Vlas. He regrets it immediately. Vlas doesn't react. Vlas, I raised him like a son, as did you. As I did with you. Simon, I'm sorry, Vlas. Vlas, I love Christopher, but this is the devil's country, and the man I see on that bed is no longer your brother. Interior, the castle, Christopher's bedchamber, sunset. The setting sun is visible through the shutters. Christopher is locked in the room and bound to the bed, but he struggles and tears against his restraints like a man possessed. And the lower the sun gets, the stronger he seems to become. Exterior, the castle, bell tower, sunset. On the highest point of the highest tower stands a dark cape figure, outlined against the ochre remains of the sunset. The bell tolls for the 3rd and last time. Dracula, come to me. Interior, the castle, corridor outside Christopher's chamber. The guards in the door hear a terrible, inhuman noise from within. They grip their swords tightly, unsure of what to do. Simon appears behind them, a grim look on his face. Simon, I'll deal with this. Interior, the castle, Christopher's bedchamber, dusk. Simon enters, locking the door behind him. The room has been torn apart, the heavy wooden bed reduced to splinters. Christopher is gone. Simon walks to the window. The shutters have been ripped from their hinges. Simon stares out at the dark night sky. Simon. Christopher. Christopher. Yes, brother. Simon turns in shock to see his brother, clinging to the ceiling of the chamber far above. His face is drawn and deathly pale. His eyes blaze in the half-light. He is a fully fledged vampire. Simon is frozen in shock as Christopher leaps from the ceiling. Both men tumble across the floor. Simon tries to draw his sword, but Christopher knocks it aside. The blade slides across the stone floor to the other side of the room. Christopher lunges at his brother, but Simon smashes a chair over him, driving him back for a moment. Interior, the castle, corridor outside Christopher's chamber. The worried guards can hear the sounds of battle within, but the door is locked. Vlas pushes them aside. Vlas, stand aside. He hefts a huge axe and swings at the door. Interior, the castle, Christopher's bedchamber, continuous. Simon slams Christopher against the wall, holding him in place with a heavy wooden chair. Simon, Christopher! Close on Christopher, his face changing every second, flickering between the Christopher we know and the beast within that is rapidly consuming him. Christopher, the hunger, brother, the pain! Christopher convulses and his eyes blaze with inhuman hunger. He flings Simon across the room. Simon lands badly. He's bleeding. His sword lies close by. Close on Christopher, the sight of blood driving him into a frenzy. Simon, brother, no! Christopher, I can't fight it. Christopher convulses his pain as the last vestige of his humanity is consumed, the vampire within taking hold for good now. On Simon, reaching for a sword, on Christopher, leaping through the air with unnatural speed and grace, his face monstrous, his fangs bared. On the brothers, as they meet, Simon's sword coming up at the last second, Christopher landing on it, impaling himself, the blade going clean through his heart and emerging from his back. On Vlas. As he finally bursts through the door, he sees the brothers locked in a death embrace, sees the tears streaming down Simon's face, close on Christopher, sliding down the sword until he is face to face with Simon. In the last moments of his life, Christopher's visage loses all trace of the beast. Christopher returns to the noble, handsome man that he was before. But now his voice is weak, barely a whisper. Christopher, I'm sorry, brother. And Christopher's eyes close for the last time. Angle on. Simon's knights watching the scene from a distance, shocked and for the first time, truly scared. Exterior, the castle, night. High angle of the three figures crossing the bridge from the castle to the sanctuary garden. Pull back to reveal that this is Dracula's point of view. He stands amongst the gargoyles that stare down from the bell tower. Dracula regards the figures below with icy detachment, like chess pieces in some elaborate game. Exterior, the castle, sanctuary garden, continuous. Simon and Vlas carry the shrouded body of Christopher between them. Arsuria follows close behind. She carries Christopher's sword and 3 shovels. Simon stops at a suitable clearing. He lowers the body to the ground. Vlas reaches for a shovel, but Simon stops him. No. It is the first time he has spoken since killing his own brother. Simon, I will do this alone. Exterior, the castle, sanctuary garden, later. Arsuria and Vlas watch Simon as he digs. He is possessed by a manic energy, driven by grief and guilt and rage. Vlas, I watched him bury his mother and his father the same way. They were slain by the Turks. He was just a boy. Arsuria gazes up at the old warrior, sees the emotion in his face. Vlas loves Simon like a son. Vlas, war and death is all he's known, and now we're all that's left. Arsuria grasps Vlas' hand, holding it tight. Exterior, the castle, sanctuary garden, later. Simon, Vlas, and Arsuria stand by the graveside. Simon thrusts his brother's sword into the soil. It acts as a marker, the hilt and blade forming a cross. Simon kneels by the sword, his hands resting on the hilt. Simon, I love you, brother. Kiss our parents for me. Tell them I will join them soon. The sudden noise of hooves breaks the moment. Simon stands and sees a half-dozen horsemen exit the castle at a full gallop. They thunder over the bridge and through the statuary garden. Simon calls to them. Dmitri, Emil, Henrik! But they ride past oblivious, headed for the forest. Simon turns to Vlas. Simon, Vlas? Vlas, I tried to make them stay. There was nothing I could do. The men are scared, my lord. Simon, scared? These are men, not children. Vlas, they believe this place is cursed, that it will drive us all insane until we kill one another. Simon, but these men are loyal. Dmitri and Emil have followed me for years. Vlas, your men would follow you anywhere, lord, but now they say you have gone too far, that you have ridden them to the gates of hell itself. Simon stares at his brother's grave, then up at the towering castle walls. Simon, perhaps they are right. Interior, the castle, grand hall. Simon enters the hall, filled with a new determination. Simon, how many men remain? Vlas, Constantine, Marius, Lucian. Simon, tell them to prepare to leave. We ride tonight. Vlas smiles, clearly pleased by the decision. Vlas, very good, my lord. Interior, the castle, Arsuria's bedchamber, night. Arsuria hurriedly packs her few possessions. She also takes the jewel-encrusted comb for good measure. Interior, the castle, grand hall. Marius and Lucian prepare for departure. Simon packs his crossbow onto his horse. He looks around, suddenly worried. Simon, where is Arsuria? Vlas, packing. Off Simon's look, Vlas, don't worry, I sent Constantine aft with her. Interior, the castle, corridor outside Arsuria's chamber. Arsuria exits, a bag slung over her shoulder. Arsuria, glancing over her shoulder. I'm done, let's go. But when she turns back, she sees Constantine slumped in the corridor. Glassy, dead eyes stare back at her. He's completely drained of blood. Arsuria takes a step back and turns, right into Angelica, her lips stained with fresh, warm blood. Angelica, am I not beautiful? Arsuria turns away, but is blocked by another bride of Dracula. Anya, am I not beautiful? Her lips are also stained with Constantine's blood. A moment later, they are all joined by the third bride, Alessa. Are we not beautiful? Arsuria is completely surrounded. She reaches for a stiletto, but it is not there. Angelica, looking for this? The blade is in Angelica's hand. Alessa, we were beautiful once. Anya, beautiful enough for him. Angelica, but not anymore. The brides circle Arsuria, their faces just inches from hers, their lips and teeth slick with blood. Alessa, now he doesn't care for us. Angelica, he's so cruel. Anya, so cold. Alessa, so very cold. Angelica, but you will never know. Alessa, he won't have you. Anya, we will. Anya lunges for Arsuria, fangs bared. Arsuria tries to fight, but is held by Angelica and Alessa. Their grip is like iron. Anya's fangs begin to sink into Arsuria's flesh as... Dracula, no! Anya is flung to one side, impacting her with a stone wall, bones popping. Dracula, she is mine! He punches through Angelica's body, ripping out her heart. As Angelica crumples, Alessa cowers in terror. Alessa, no, please! Exterior, the castle. Alessa explodes through a stained glass window. Her body drops 200 feet and lands on the ground with a dull, fleshy thump. She's impaled with multiple shards of stained glass. One has gone clear through her heart. Interior, the castle, corridor. Anya, the last remaining bride, crawls away from Dracula. His shadow falls over her. Anya, please, please, my lord, you loved me once, show mercy! Close on Arsuria, watching in horror. We hear but do not see what Dracula does to Anya, a small but important mercy. Moving with impossible speed, Dracula suddenly appears behind Arsuria. Dracula, look away. Arsuria turns, startled by his sudden appearance. Dracula, your eyes should not behold such horror. Arsuria wants to turn away from him, but cannot. Something deep within his eyes keeps her held, something mesmerizing. Dracula, they were foul creatures. They would have done you harm, and I could not allow that to happen. Arsuria tries to steal a glance at Anya, but Dracula will not let her. Arsuria, is that what will happen to me? Dracula, to you? Dracula's words are like velvet. Arsuria's pupils dilate. She seems to be sinking into a trance-like state. Dracula, I could never allow any harm to come to you. The background behind Arsuria starts to become blurred and indistinct. Dracula, I failed you once before, my love. And now the background behind Arsuria transforms. It is 100 years previous. The show trial of Alicia as a witch. Dracula, I will not let that happen again. And now Arsuria is Alicia, bound to a ladder, about to be lowered into a blazing bonfire. Alicia/Arsuria is blinded by the heat of the flames, choking on the fumes, but never once losing sight of her husband held in shackles across the courtyard. Dracula stares back at her with an undying love. And even at the point of death, Alicia/Arsuria stares back at him with the same unwavering, undying love. Dracula, when you were taken from me, I swore vengeance. Flashback. We see Dracula in King Radu's dungeon. The door swings open to reveal dead guards and the shadowy forms of Dracula's rescuers. One of his supporters steps from the shadows. It is Petru. Dracula, but more than that. I swore that I would be with you again. That fate could not part us, that death should have no dominion over us. Dracula leaves the desecrated church that contains the severed heads of King Radu and his flunky priests. He has it set ablaze. Petru is by his side. Dracula, and so I fled to the mountains, looking for ancient wisdom, forbidden lore. Dracula and his followers ride into the forbidding storm-capped mountains. We recognize many of the villagers amongst them, only now we see them in their original guise, Romanian knights and noblemen. Dracula, the people of these mountains have their own beliefs, more ancient and timeless than this upstart Christ. Deep within the mountain pass, Dracula and his followers discover an ancient stone circle, wreathed in mist. Around it worship black-clad druids. Dracula, they believe that there is no heaven, no hell, and when one life ends, another begins, an endless cycle. Dracula worships amongst the druids, drinks from an ancient chalice. Blood spills from his lips, his pact with the darkness complete. Dracula, and even if the one you love is taken from you, if you are patient and true, they will be returned to you again. Close on Dracula. his eyes blazing with an unnatural light, ensuring the immortality of his love. He gazes at something in his hand, a beautiful golden locket, and inside it a portrait of his murdered bride, Alicia. And now the scene transforms again, the portrait of Alicia becoming flesh and blood, Arsuria, leading us seamlessly into interior, the castle, continuous. Dracula has his arms around Arsuria. She melts into him, her trance complete. Dracula, I have waited so long for you, so much pain, so many disappointments, but at last you have been returned to me. He glances at Arsuria's neck, then averts his gaze, suddenly pained. Dracula, there is only one thing that stands between us. Simon's crucifix still hangs around Arsuria's neck. Renounce the God that cursed us both, the God that forsook us, that mocked us in our time of greatest need. Arsuria's hands reach up to her neck. Dracula, renounce him and come to me. Arsuria discards the crucifix. It falls to the ground. Arsuria, my love. Continued. Dracula's fangs grow and he sinks his teeth into her unprotected neck. But Arsuria does not fight. Instead, she trembles, almost in ecstasy, drawing Dracula closer to her, deeper into her. Simon. No! Simon stands in the doorway, sword and chain whip drawn. Simon. Keep away from her! Simon strikes out with his whip, the razor-sharp chains catching Dracula across the face, drawing blood. Dracula howls a deep guttural cry, more animal than human, and when he looks up at Simon, his face is that of a beast. Simon. Foul monster! Simon strikes with the whip again, but this time Dracula catches it. Wrapping it around his arm, he pulls Simon off his feet with inhuman strength. Simon crashes to the ground and Dracula leaps at him. Left without support, Arsuria crumples to the ground. Simon. You shall not have her! He plunges his sword deep into Dracula's shoulder, but instead of submitting, Dracula grips the blade with his bare hand. Oblivious to the sharp metal cutting into his flesh, he pulls the sword out of his shoulder. Dracula. You cannot stop me. He breaks Simon's sword in two with his bare hands. Simon raises his whip, but Dracula is lightning fast. He sends Simon flying backwards with a bone-crushing blow. Simon lands close beside Arsuria. Her eyes flicker, barely conscious, but they lock on Simon. Arsuria. Help me. And with the last of her strength, she glances at something on the floor, the crucifix. Dracula leaps at Simon. But this time Simon fights back, not with the blade, but with the crucifix in his hand. Dracula recoils in horror. Simon presses the crucifix to his enemy's forehead where it burns the flesh. Screaming, Dracula stumbles backward and falls from the high window through which he threw Alessa. Exterior, the castle. Simon watches as Dracula plunges to his doom, his black cape flapping urgently all around him as he falls into a blanket of mist. It's hard to tell in the dim light, and it could be the cloak flailing around him, but for a moment it almost looks as though Dracula sprouts dark black wings, and then he is gone, swallowed by the mist. Interior, the castle. Simon steps back from the window, gathers up Arsuria in his arms. Vlas enters, followed quickly by Marius and Lucian. Vlas. My lord! Simon. I'm all right. Vlas. And Dracula? Dead. Arsuria. No. Everyone turns to Arsuria, cradled in Simon's arms. She is pale, traumatized, barely conscious, but there is an unnatural light in her eyes. Arsuria. He still lives. I feel him. Simon. You feel him? Arsuria. His heartbeat, in time to mine, my blood in his veins. We are joined. Vlas. My God! Off Vlas's look. We see that Arsuria also carries the faint outline of a cross on her forehead, a shadow of Dracula's scar. These two are indeed joined. Exterior, the castle, Arsuria's bedchamber, night. Arsuria lies in a shallow, restless sleep. She is pale and weak, her skin covered in a sheen of sweat. Simon and Vlas look on concerned. They have seen all this before. Vlas. Exactly like Christopher. Simon touches Arsuria's forehead lightly. It's clear he's in love with her. Simon. What can we do? Vlas. Shrugs. On the battlefield, when a wound becomes infected, we cut it out. Simon follows Vlas' thought. Simon. He is the disease. Vlas. If we kill him, perhaps we spare her. Perhaps. Interior. The castle. Various rooms. Montage. Simon and his men tear the castle apart searching for Dracula. Simon. When we find him, how do we kill him? Vlas. He fears the cross and feeds on blood. We pin him with the cross, then we cut out his heart. Thinks for a moment. We hack off his head for good measure. Exterior. The castle. Night. The moon races across the night sky. Interior. The castle. Arsuria's bedchamber. Night. Arsuria wakes from her fevered sleep, but her eyes are unfocused, her pupils dilated, mesmerized. Arsuria. My love. Interior. The castle. Dracula's chamber. Continuous. We don't get a clear sense of the chamber, focusing instead on Dracula. He lies in the darkness in what seems to be a stone sarcophagus filled with earth. He's in the form of a beast, part bat, part wolf, but still recognizably human. The scar of the cross festers on his forehead. Clearly he was badly wounded, but he's slowly regaining his strength in the darkness. Arsuria. My love. His eyes open when he hears Arsuria's whispered voice. These, too, are the eyes of a beast. Dracula. Soon, soon we shall be together. Even his voice is bestial. Dracula. Soon we shall be immortal. Interior. The castle. Grand hall. Simon stands by the embers in a huge fireplace. His men gather around him. Simon. Vlas. Simon? No sign of him. Simon. Marsilius. Lucian. They shake their heads. Simon. Again. Then we search again. Vlas. There is no room. No chamber we have not searched already. Simon. Damn it! Simon slumps down into a chair. The same chair Dracula had been seated at when the fortress was attacked by the Turks. The chessboard in its half-played game sits before him. Simon continued. Where is he hiding? Simon stares at the chess pieces, then suddenly lashes out in frustration. Chess pieces go flying. The Red King is broken in half, exactly as the Germans will find it in 500 years. After a moment. Vlas. My lord. Simon. Impatient. What is it? He follows Vlas's gaze to the chessboard. Despite Simon's blow, 4 chess pieces have not moved. They remain locked to the board. Simon tries to lift one of them, but there is resistance. After a moment, it comes away from the board. Underneath the piece is a piece of polished metal, a magnet. The Romanian knights look up at the sudden sound of grinding metal and stone. The bridge to the castle is rotating. Simon lifts another chess piece, and the entrance to the great hall is blocked by metal spikes which rise from the floor. The third piece he lifts activates the screaming Gothic statues in the statuary garden. Simon and Vlas stare at the fourth and last chess piece. This one is the Black King in the form of a dragon, and its purpose is unknown. Simon carefully picks it up. A beat. Then nothing. Simon glances at Vlas. Another beat, then a tremble runs through the room. The spooked horses bolt as the vibration builds in intensity, like a coming earthquake. High-angle shot, showing the giant mosaic of the coiled dragon which dominates the floor of the great hall. One by one the coils begin to sink into the floor, creating a giant circular staircase that spirals away into the darkness. Interior, the castle, Dracula's chamber. Dracula suddenly wakes, aware of the danger. Dracula. Kill them all, kill them now! Exterior, the village square, continuous. Mayor Perchus steps into frame, a murderous look on his face. He has heard his master's call. Interior, the castle, grand hall. Simon and his men stare down at the spiral staircase. It disappears off into the darkness. Vlas. It seems we have found the dragon's lair. Lucian. Sir. Lucian points to the bridge outside. A procession of villagers are crossing to the castle. They are armed to the teeth. Vlas turns to Simon. Vlas, we will deal with this. He stares into the depths of the dragon's coils. Vlas. Slay the beast. Save her. Simon glances at the villagers led by Petro. The odds are overwhelming. Simon. Vlas. But Vlas shakes his head, throws Simon his sword. Vlas. Go. Go now. Simon shares one last look with Vlas, then hurries into the depths. Vlas shouts after him. Godspeed! Then Vlas turns his attention back to the mob outside. And may God help us all. The villagers reach the metal spikes that bar their entry into the castle. Without missing a beat, they turn to scale the walls like lizards or spiders, their true inhuman forms becoming more evident by the second. Vlas turns to Lucian and Marcius. To the battlements! Interior, the castle, spiral staircase. Simon descends into the fabric of the mountain. Sword in hand, the chain whip fastened to his belt, his crossbow slung over his back, a blazing torch held aloft. Interior, the castle, Arsuria's bedchamber. Arsuria sits bolt upright in bed. She seems to have no control over her body, as it moved by unseen hands. Dracula. Come to me. Arsuria rises from her bed. Interior, the castle, Dracula's chamber. Continuous. Dracula. Come to me. All my children. Interior, the castle, spiral staircase. Simon reaches the foot of the stairs. The inky shadows seem almost alive, as if they were trying to smother the feeble, flickering flames of his torch. Ahead lies a vast portal etched in ancient runes, and beyond, darkness. Exterior, the castle, battlements. Vlas bursts out into the battlements. Marius and Lucian follow close behind. Vlas peers over the battlements. He sees 3 dozen villagers scaling the walls like lizards. In the darkness, their eyes seem to burn with a fiery red glow. Vlas drops a blazing torch over the side. As it plummets past the villagers, it illuminates them for an instant, and we see their true forms. No longer trying to hide their identities, we see the villagers for what they really are. What Christopher had glimpsed earlier, the ancient retainers of Dracul. Over 150 years old, their withered skin is pulled tight over their skeletal frames, but they are driven on by an unnatural, devilish energy. From now on, they will be known as what they truly are, Dracula's undead familiars. Vlas fixes Lucian and Marius with a steely glare. None shall pass. Lucian and Marius nod. Lucian and Marius both say at the same time, none shall pass. Behind them, the sky is starting to lighten with a pre-dawn glow. Interior, the castle, labyrinth. Simon makes his way through an endless maze of rough-hewn corridors. The only illumination is flickering torch. Suddenly a dark silhouette moves between Simon and the camera. Startled, Simon turns, but whatever it was is gone. Simon tightens his grip on the sword, and as it slowly dawns on him that perhaps the hunter has become the hunted. Exterior, the castle, battlements. Vlas and Marius and Lucian cast rocks down onto the undead familiars as they clamber up the sheer walls of the castle. A few of the rocks hit, smashing bones and dislodging the undead. The familiars plummet hundreds of feet to their doom. But there are just too many of them. Vlas grips his sword tightly as the skeletal undead crust the battlements, and the fighting becomes hand-to-hand. None shall pass! Interior, the castle, Dracula's chamber. At last we see Dracula's inner sanctum. Once this place was part of the forest and open to the sky, a mountain gully with steep sides. But Dracula's has constructed a castle on top of it, sealing the gully in forever and creating a vast man-made cave. Denied access to the life-giving sun, all the vegetation here is long since dead. Petrified trees right out of the earth. Their dead branches reaching up to the vaulted foundations of the castle far above. As Simon wanders through this rotting wonderland, he sees an ancient stone circle amongst the lifeless trees, the place of Dracula's conversion. Dracula has constructed his fortress on the very root of his power. And at the heart of the stone circle, filled with earth, a stone sarcophagus, Dracula's resting place. Exterior, the castle, battlements. The fighting is brutal. Lucian is thrown from the battlements by a mob of familiars. He plunges to his fate far below. Vlas cleaves an enemy clean in half, but there are another 5 that take his place. Marius is dragged under by a snarling pack of familiars. Tearing claws and razor-sharp teeth rip him apart. Vlas fights on, but now he is alone. Interior, the castle, Dracula's chamber. Simon approaches the sarcophagus with trepidation. Inside lies Dracula, eyes wide open, fixed on his nemesis. Would you kill me now? Why, I am weak, defenseless. But Simon doesn't intend to debate it. He raises his sword, ready to strike. Arsuria. No, please! Arsuria emerges from behind one of the standing stones. Her eyes are glazed, pupils dilated. Arsuria. Spare him! Simon. No. He drives his blade into the sarcophagus. But Dracula is no longer there. Simon turns and Dracula is standing right beside him. A crushing blow sends Simon flying. He impacts with one of the standing stones and crumples to the ground. As Dracula approaches, Simon raises his crucifix in defense. Dracula, laughing. Your symbol of power has no use here. Dracula swats the crucifix aside. It falls to the ground. Dracula, this is a sacred place. Within this circle your god has no dominion. But as Dracula gloats, Simon strikes like a snake, his blade cutting through Dracula's throat. The vampire staggers backward as Simon readies the killer blow. He swings, but the blade is caught. Panned from the hand holding the blade to reveal Christopher, his hair and face muddled, his clothes in tatters, his fingers dirty and broken from digging himself out of his own grave. Christopher. Brother! But there is none of Simon's brother left here. Christopher's humanity is gone completely. He's a fully fledged vampire. Christopher twists his brother's hand, and the blade falls to the ground. Christopher. A blade through the heart only works if you leave it in there. Close on Dracula, holding his throat, where Simon had cut him. The wound begins to heal. Close on Arsuria, watching the 2 brothers fight to the death. Great sadness in her eyes, but powerless to help. Dracula puts his arm around her. Dracula, comforting. Come away. We should leave the brothers to their dance. On the brothers. As Christopher spins Simon around and forces him to his knees. Christopher. I heard your words through the earth. He forces his fangs around his brother's throat. Christopher. But I fear you will see our parents before I. Close on Simon. He is not afraid. He stares at his brother calmly, sadly. Simon, I will avenge you, brother. Christopher looks confused for a moment, and then convulses violently. He looks down to see that Simon has thrust a crossbow bolt into his chest, opening up the old wound, piercing his heart. Christopher takes one last look at his brother, then sinks to the ground, dead, angle on the crucifix, as Simon picks it up, close on Simon. As he looks up, eyes filled with grief, but also blazing with anger, he sees Dracula walking away from him, his arms around Arsuria. Simon unfurls his chain whip and lashes out. He catches Dracula around the shoulder. Simon hauls with all his might, pulling Dracula clean off his feet. He flies backwards, crashing to the ground before Simon. Furious, Dracula leaps to the attack, pummeling Simon with a series of mighty blows, driving him back, punishing him relentlessly, until eventually Simon can take no more. Bloodied and broken, he holds up the crucifix again, a last feeble defense. Dracula, laughing, that is of no use here. But now it is Simon's turn to smile. The unexpected gesture causes Dracula to hesitate for a moment. With growling realization, he looks around. To his horror, he realizes that he is outside the stone circle. Simon has tricked him. In an instant, Simon is upon his foe, pressing the crucifix to Dracula's forehead. The vampire tries to fend it off, but when he touches the crucifix with his hands, they too blister and burn. Pressing his advantage, Simon readies his sword. Seeing the inevitable, Dracula cries out, "No!" But Simon plunges the blade deep into Dracula's chest. Mortally wounded, the vampire still won't die. He locks his eyes with those of Simon. "You will not take her from me." Grasping the hilt of the sword, he breaks the blade in two. Most of the blade is still embedded in Dracula, but now he holds the hilt and 2 inches of the jagged blade in his hands. He plunges the remains of the sword into Simon. Now the two are locked together in an embrace of death, and it is Simon who falls to his knees first. He's just a mortal, with a mortal's strength. All he can do is watch as Dracula, still on his feet, turns away and staggers back to the protection of the stone circle. Every step is agony, but Dracula is going to make it. He is going to live. He grasps the blade, and inch by agonizing inch, he begins to pull it from his chest. Dracula is just 2 steps away from the circle in safety when Arsuria takes him in her arms. Dracula, my love, help me! Arsuria grasps the blade. Her eyes never leave those of Dracula's, and slowly, gently, she begins to slide the blade back into his chest. There is nothing vicious or ugly about her actions. They are almost loving and tender, putting her love to rest, giving him peace. Dracula, what have you done? He looks at her with pleading eyes. Arsuria, for you the wait is over, and Dracula dies in her arms. She holds him for a long moment, and slowly, gently lays his head to rest. As Dracula's head touches the ground, he has returned to the beautiful, noble warrior he once was. Exterior, the castle, battlements. Vlass makes his last stand, vastly outnumbered, moments from death, but he is unbowed. He will have a warrior's end. And then, without warning, the familiars begin to withdraw, melting back into the shadows. And after a moment, Vlass is left alone. Interior, the castle, grand hall. Simon staggers to the top of the spiral stairs, with Arsuria's assistance. He is mortally wounded. Simon, no further. This is far enough. In the distance, the giant bell begins to toll as the sun crests the horizon. Simon looks up at the high windows. Shafts of sunlight are starting to filter through them. Simon, I would see the sun one last time. Simon sinks to the ground. Arsuria cradles his head in her hands. Vlass, my lord. Simon, Vlass. The Moor hurries over to his dying lord. Simon, in great pain, I fear this has been our last battle. Vlass, at least it was a good one. Simon forces a smile, grips his hand of his friend. Simon, it was. And with his last dying breath, he turns to Arsuria. I wish we had more time. Arsuria, don't worry, my love. His eyes begin to dim. Arsuria, I will wait for you. These are the last words he hears. Simon is dead. Arsuria, I will wait. There are tears in Vlass's eyes, but suddenly he turns, sword in hand. The familiars have returned. Now in the guise of the villagers once more, 24 familiars stand silently behind Vlass, so close they could reach out and touch him, but they do not. Mayor Patru is the first to kneel. The rest of the villagers follow suit, until every one of them is kneeling, heads bent in supplication, close on Vlass. Confused, He glances at Arsuria, who is now standing. A patch of sunlight creeps across the floor, and Arsuria takes a step back to avoid it. And slowly confusion turns to horror as Vlas pieces together the truth. He realizes the villagers' familiars are kneeling before Arsuria. Simon did not slay Dracula in time, and Arsuria is turned. She is their new lord. Close on Arsuria, gazing at Vlas, her intentions unclear. Hard cut to exterior, the castle, sunrise. As the sun spills around the fortress, the camera begins to pull back. As it does, the sun accelerates, racing through the sky, a whole day passing in seconds. The moon follows, and a heartbeat later the sun once more. Time passes rapidly. Day turns to night, winter to spring, summer to fall. As the camera continues to pull back, the years fall away and the castle begins to weather, then crumble. Super, Carpathian Mountains, Roman. Now. Present day. Aerial shot. A Mercedes bus approaches the castle and tourists spill out. Exterior, interior. The castle, village, day. The castle and village are now clearly abandoned. This place has become a mecca for tourism. Souvenir stalls everywhere. A montage shows us all the locations of our story. The village square, the grand hall, the castle battlements, all sanitized for the tourist dollar and yen. Interior, the castle, grand hall. Tourists with headphones take audio tours, others snap digital stills. High angle, showing the dragon mosaic on the floor. Tourists cross it like tiny ants. Slowly we dissolve to an identical mosaic, fashioned the same black and red colors, but this one is inlaid into a brand new marble floor, widened to reveal interior, the tower, sunset, a magnificent structure that shames IMP. Newly constructed in Manhattan, close to ground zero. A thoroughly modern fortress of glass and steel. If you're quick, you will notice the familiars dressed as security guards, cleaners, and office staff. Over hidden speakers, a discreet bell tolls 3 times. Interior, the tower, penthouse, sunset. An elevator opens and an elegant figure steps into the luxurious penthouse. We follow the figure as he walks through the vast spaces. Views of Manhattan through every window. Up ahead is a balcony overlooking the river far below. Standing there is a beautiful woman. Elegant figure. Stock reports, bond rates, and currency fluctuations. As he places the information on a glass table, the elegant figure is revealed to be Vlas, impeccably dressed in a $5,000 suit, the armor of the modern business warrior. Vlas, what do you plan for tonight? The beautiful woman turns. It is Arsuria, more stunning than ever, but a haunted look in her eyes. Arsuria. To wait, Vlas, as always. She turns back to the last remains of the sunset, still waiting for her lover's return. Arsuria. To wait. Exterior, the tower, sunset. An aerial shot pulls away from Arsuria on her balcony to reveal her modern castle in all its glory, outlined against the crimson sky. And then, never once losing sight of Arsuria, we drift away across the timeless Manhattan skyline. The wait continues.